The mess hall of the Galactic Confederation's flagship Improbable Victory was a marvel of xenoengineering designed to accommodate species from across the known universe. It was a cacophony of sights, sounds, and smells that would make any Earth zoo seem positively mundane by comparison. And yet, at this moment, it was eerily silent. Well, almost silent. The background hum of the ship's engines, which sounded suspiciously like a humpback whale with a bad case of indigestion, provided a bass note to the tension that hung in the air. Every alien eye and a few sensing appendages that defied classification was fixed on the lone human aboard the ship. Sarah Johnson stood with her arms crossed, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth as she faced down the ship's command staff. You want to do what now ZX Klorp's gelatinous form quivered with what could only be described as alien disbelief. If he had eyebrows, they'd be raised so high they'd be orbiting the nearby moon. Sarah's smirk widened into a full grin. You heard me, Jello Shot. I volunteer for the mission. Captain VRZT, a towering insectoid with mandibles that could double as hedge trimmers, chittered nervously. His compound eyes flickered between Sarah and the holographic display of their target, the exororgal homeworld, a swirling mass of purples and greens that looked like a cosmic bowling ball had mated with a lava lamp. MS. Johnson, the captain began, his voice a mix of clicks and whistles that the ship's universal translator rendered into something approximating exasperated concern. Perhaps you misheard the briefing. This mission has a 99.99999% chance of failure. We were planning to send in our most advanced AI-controlled drones. Sarah snorted, a sound that made several of the more delicate alien species flinch. Oh, I heard you just fine, Captain Bugzapper. But let's be real here, your advanced AI couldn't beat a toddler at tic-tac-toe. You need someone who can think on their feet, or tentacles, or whatever appendages you lot have. Laughter rippled through the room, a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and one sound that was disturbingly similar to a toilet flushing. The tension in the air began to dissipate, replaced by a mixture of amusement and bewilderment. But it's a suicide mission, sputtered ZX Klorp, his gelatinous form now resembling a vibrating bowl of lime jello. Sarah rolled her eyes so hard it was a wonder they didn't get stuck. Oh please, I've had dates scarier than this mission. Remember, I'm from Earth. We call your Deathworlds vacation spots. The galley erupted in a mixture of laughter and horrified gasps. One poor alien, in the back a species that communicated entirely through interpretive dance, began a frantic routine that could only be described as the Macarena meets an epileptic seizure. Captain VRZT's mandibles clacked thoughtfully. MS Johnson, while your enthusiasm is noted, I must remind you of the mission parameters. You would be infiltrating the hive mind of the exororgal collective. Their psychic defenses are impenetrable to all known species.
Sarah waved a hand dismissively. PFF'd. Impenetrable psychic defenses? Please. I grew up with 3 older sisters and a mum with eyes in the back of her head. Try keeping secrets in that house.
More laughter, this time with a few aliens nodding in what seemed to be understanding. Apparently, terrifying matriarchs were a universal constant. But the atmospheric conditions ZX Klorp began before Sarah cut him off. Let me guess. Acid rain? Poisonous air? Gravity that'll turn my bones to powder, she grinned. Sounds like a typical Tuesday in Australia. I'll pack sunscreen. The dancing alien in the back had now progressed to what looked like a mix between the thriller dance and a grand mal seizure. Captain VRZT's antennae twitched, a sign of both amusement and resignation. Very well, MS Johnson. If you insist on this, madness will begin preparations immediately. But I want it noted in the ship's log that I think this is a terrible idea. Sarah's grin widened. Noted, Captain. And hey, if I don't make it back, feel free to tell my next of kin that my last words were something suitably heroic. Maybe the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or I regret that I have but one life to give for my galaxy.
And if you do make it back, asked a tentacled alien from the engineering department, its voice gurgling through what Sarah assumed was some kind of liquid-breathing apparatus.
Then my actual last words will probably be, "Hey wall, watch this," Sarah replied with a wink. As the room erupted in laughter once more, Sarah couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement. Sure, infiltrating an alien hive mind sounded dangerous, but compared to rush hour traffic in Los Angeles, child's play. The preparation for the mission was, in Sarah's humble opinion, a comedy of errors that would have made the Three Stooges proud. The alien technicians, used to outfitting beings with wildly different physiologies, seemed utterly baffled by her boringly human form. "No, for the last time, I don't need a methane respirator," Sarah sighed, removing the bulky apparatus from her face for the third time. It looked like the unholy offspring of a gas mask and a squid. "I breathe oxygen, remember? You know, that stuff you all keep locked away because it's too corrosive." The technician, a spindly creature that looked like a praying mantis, had a torrid love affair with a palm tree, chittered apologetically. "Our deepest apologies, Deathworlder Johnson. We're just not used to outfitting such durable creatures." Sarah snorted. "Durable? Please. I pulled a muscle last week reaching for the TV remote. I'm not exactly the Terminator here." The blank stare she received in return reminded her, once again, that her pop culture references were wasted on this crowd. She made a mental note to host a movie night when she returned. These poor, deprived aliens needed an education in the finer points of human cinema. Starting, of course, with Alien, the irony was not lost on her. "Perhaps we should try the gravitic compensator again," suggested another technician. This one a floating cloud of sparkling gas contained within a transparent sphere. Sarah groaned. "You mean that thing that made me feel like I was walking on the moon while simultaneously being pulled through a black hole?" "Hard pass, Tinkerbell. I'll take my chances with good old-fashioned muscle power, thanks." After what felt like hours of poking, prodding, and one particularly awkward moment involving a device she was pretty sure was actually a kitchen whisk, Sarah was finally deemed mission-ready. She stood before a full-length mirror, or what passed for one in a ship designed for creatures of all shapes and sizes, and had to bite back a laugh. The stealth suit they'd given her looked like what would happen if a wetsuit mated with a disco ball. Guys," she called out to the technicians. "I thought this was supposed to be a stealth suit. I look like I'm about to audition for Eurovision." Captain VRZZ's mandibles clicked in what Sarah had come to recognize as his version of a chuckle. "The suit adapts to match its surroundings, MS Johnson. Once activated, you'll be nearly invisible." Nearly Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Well," the captain hedged, "there may be a slight issue with the olfactory cloaking. You might smell faintly of lavender." Sarah blinked. "Lavender? You're sending me to infiltrate an alien hive mind, and I'm going to smell like my grandmother's underwear drawer." The engineering alien Sarah really needed to learn his name. She couldn't keep calling him Tentacle McGee. In her head waved an appendage excitedly. "We could change it to Sandalwood if you prefer." "Never mind," Sarah sighed. "Lavender's fine. Who knows, maybe I'll lull the hive mind to sleep with my soothing aroma." As the final preparations were made, Sarah found herself standing before the airlock that would lead her to the small stealth ship she'd be taking to the exorolgal homeworld. The gravity of the situation was finally starting to sink in, battling with her natural inclination towards humor as a defense mechanism. Captain VRZT approached, his usually imposing form somehow managing to look concerned. "MS Johnson, I feel I must ask one last time, are you certain you wish to proceed? The odds of survival are infinitesimal, astronomical, smaller than an atom's waistline." Sarah finished for him. "Yeah, I got it. But here's the thing, Captain. Where I come from, we have a saying, never tell me the odds." The captain's antennae twitched in confusion. "That seems like a rather impractical approach to risk assessment." Sarah laughed. "Welcome to humanity, Captain. We're all about impractical approaches. It's kind of our thing." With a final salute that was equal parts respectful and sarcastic, Sarah stepped into the airlock. As the door hissed shut behind her, she couldn't help but mutter, "Well, here goes nothing. Or everything. Probably everything." The journey to the exorolgal homeworld was, to put it mildly, an exercise in sensory overload. Sarah's small stealth ship zipped through space at speeds that made her question everything she thought she knew about physics, biology, and her ability to keep her last meal where it belonged. "Good thing I skipped the in-flight meal," she muttered to herself, gripping the control yoke with white-knuckled determination. "Although I'm pretty sure the grey goop they called nutrient paste would have stayed put through a supernova." As she approached the planet, that swirling mass of purples and greens that still reminded her of a cosmic bowling ball, Sarah activated her comms. "Deathworlder to improbable victory, do you read me?" "Over." There was a moment of static before Captain VRZ's voice crackled through. "We read you, MS Johnson, though I must once again protest your insistence on using that ridiculous call sign." Sarah grinned. "Oh, come on, Captain. It's got a nice ring to it. Besides, it strikes fear into the hearts of our enemies, or whatever organ they use for being scared. The XR do not have hearts, MS Johnson. They have a complex system of psychic nodes that—" Figure of speech, Captain Sarah interrupted. "Anyway, I'm approaching the drop zone. Any last-minute advice before I plunge headfirst into what's probably a very bad decision?" There was a pause, and Sarah could almost hear the captain's mandibles clicking in thought. Finally he spoke. "Remember your training, trust your instincts, and may the odds be ever in your favor." Sarah blinked in surprise. Did you just quote the Hunger Games at me?" "I may have taken the liberty of reviewing some of your Earth popular culture in preparation for this mission," the captain replied, a hint of smugness in his tone.
"Well, I'll be damned," Sarah laughed. "There's hope for you yet, bug zapper. Johnson out."
With that, she cut the comms and focused on the rapidly approaching planet. The ship's cloaking technology engaged, wrapping her in a field that bent light, scrambled sensors, and apparently made her smell like her grandmother's linen closet. As she entered the atmosphere, the ship bucked and shuddered like a mechanical bull with a grudge. "Come on, you overpriced tin," Sarah growled through gritted teeth. "If I wanted this much turbulence, I'd have booked a flight on Spirit Airlines." Finally, after what felt like an eternity of being shaken like a maraca in the hands of an over-enthusiastic mariachi band, Sarah's ship touched down in what appeared to be a vast, purple plain. The ground had an odd, spongy texture, and the air was thick with a mist that sparkled faintly. "Well," Sarah muttered, as she performed one last check of her equipment, "here goes nothing. Time to infiltrate an alien hive mind. Just another Tuesday, right?" She stepped out of the ship, immediately sinking ankle-deep into the spongy ground. "Oh, fantastic. It's like walking on a planet-sized memory foam mattress." She took a few experimental steps, each accompanied by a soft squish that would have been comical if it weren't for the gravity of her mission. In the distance, Sarah could make out what looked like a massive structure, a twisted spire that seemed to defy the laws of physics, spiraling up into the sparkling mist. "I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that's where the party's at," she said to herself, setting off towards the imposing edifice. As she walked, or rather, squished her way across the landscape, Sarah became aware of a faint buzzing in the back of her mind. It started as little more than an irritating hum, like a mosquito that had gotten lost in her ear canal, but it grew steadier with each step towards the spire. "Oh joy," she muttered. "Is this what passes for a psychic attack around here? I've had worse headaches from drinking cheap tequila."
But as the buzzing intensified, Sarah found herself having to concentrate harder to keep her thoughts focused. Images and sensations that weren't her own began to flicker at the edges of her consciousness: alien landscapes, incomprehensible technologies, and emotions that had no name in any human language.
"Okay," she grunted, pausing to shake her head clear. "Maybe this is a little more intense than a tequila hangover." The spire loomed closer, its twisted form seeming to writhe and pulse in Sarah's vision. Whether this was an effect of the psychic interference or just good old-fashioned terror, she couldn't be sure.
As she approached what appeared to be an entrance, a gaping maw in the base of the spire that pulsed with an eerie, bioluminescent light, Sarah took a deep breath. Right then, into the belly of the beast. Or the brain, whatever. She stepped into the opening, immediately enveloped by a warmth that was equal parts comforting and unsettling. The walls pulsed with a rhythm that reminded her uncomfortably of a heartbeat, and tendrils of light danced along the floor, ceiling and walls.
"If this turns out to be some kind of cosmic digestive tract," Sarah muttered, "I'm going to be seriously pissed." As she ventured deeper into the structure, the psychic pressure intensified. Thoughts and memories that weren't her own began to intrude more forcefully. She saw flashes of alien worlds, felt the echo of emotions she couldn't name, heard snippets of conversations in languages that hurt her ears. Okay, she gasped, leaning against a wall for support. "Focus, Sarah. Remember why you're here." But why was she here? For a moment, she couldn't remember. The mission, the ship, even her own name began to feel hazy and distant. The exorgal collective pressed in on her mind, threatening to subsume her very identity. And then, cutting through the psychic fog like a knife, came a thought so uniquely, ridiculously human, that it shocked Sarah back to herself. "I wonder if they have Wi-Fi in here." Sarah burst out laughing, the sound echoing strangely in the organic corridors of the spire. The sheer absurdity of the thought, so out of place in this alien environment, was like a bucket of ice water to her psyche. "Oh man," she wheezed, wiping tears from her eyes. "If that doesn't prove I'm human, I don't know what does. All right, you psychic squids, let's dance." With renewed determination, Sarah pressed on. The deeper she went, the more intense the psychic pressure became. But now, instead of trying to block it out, she let it wash over her. She was a leaf on the wind, bending but not breaking. And as she did, something strange began to happen. The alien thoughts and memories began to make a weird kind of sense, not in a way she could articulate, but in a way she could feel. "Oh," she breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "Oh, wow." The exorgal weren't invaders, she realized. They weren't conquerors. They were explorers, driven by a curiosity that matched humanity's own. Their hive mind wasn't a weapon, but a tool, a way to share knowledge and experiences across vast distances. Sarah found herself in what she instinctively knew was the heart of the hive mind, a vast, pulsing chamber that seemed to stretch into infinity, and at its center, a being of pure thought and energy. "Welcome," came a voice that wasn't a voice. "You are." Unexpected. Sarah grinned, trying to mask her awe with her usual bravado. "Yeah, I get that a lot. Listen, I think there's been a bit of a misunderstanding between our people. Mind if we chat?" The being pulsed, a ripple of curiosity washing over Sarah. "Chat, yes, we would. Enjoy that." What followed was a conversation, unlike any in human history. Ideas and emotions flowed back and forth, unbound by the limitations of language. Sarah felt her mind expand, touching the vastness of the exorgal collective's knowledge. She saw the birth of stars, the dance of galaxies, the intricate web of life that spanned the cosmos. She felt the joy of discovery, the thrill of exploration, the deep contentment of shared experiences, and in return, she shared the human experience. The joy of laughter, the thrill of a roller coaster, the comfort of a hug, the taste of pizza at 2 a.m. She shared humanity's triumphs and failures, its hopes and fears. "You are." Fascinating. The exorgal consciousness pulsed. We had not anticipated such complexity from a non-collective species. Sarah couldn't help but chuckle, the sound echoing strangely in the vast psychic space. "Oh, honey, you ain't seen nothing yet. Humanity's got more layers than an onion wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma." With sprinkles on top, a ripple of what could only be described as cosmic amusement washed through the chamber. "Your species uses humor as a defense mechanism." Intriguing. Defense mechanism, coping strategy, way of life, take your pick. Sarah shrugged, an oddly physical gesture in this realm of pure thought. "So, now that we've had our meet cute, mind telling me why you've been giving the rest of the galaxy the heebie-jeebies?" The exorgal's response was a complex swirl of emotions and concepts that Sarah's mind struggled to interpret. It was like trying to read war and peace written on the head of a pin while riding a roller coaster. "Whoa," she winced, holding up a hand. "Dial it back a notch, will you? My poor monkey brain can only handle so much cosmic enlightenment at once."
Apologies, the exorgal pulsed, adjusting its psychic output. We sometimes forget the limitations of individual consciousness. To answer simply, we seek understanding.
Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Understanding? That's it? All this fuss over some interstellar cultural exchange?" "Not just cultural," the exorgal clarified. "We seek to understand the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. The diversity of thought in the galaxy fascinates us. We wish to sample it." "Sample it," Sarah repeated flatly. "You make it sound like we're all just flavors in some cosmic ice cream parlor." A burst of amusement rippled through the chamber. "An apt analogy, though perhaps not entirely accurate. We do not wish to consume, merely to experience." Sarah crossed her arms, a skeptical expression on her face. "Aha! And it didn't occur to you that maybe, just maybe, forcibly probing the minds of other species might be considered a teensy bit rude?" The psychic equivalent of embarrassment radiated from the exorgal. "We did not consider that our methods might be perceived as invasive." The concept of individual privacy is foreign to us. Clearly, Sarah snorted. Look, I get it. You're curious. Curiosity's great. Heck, it's what drove me to volunteer for this suicide mission in the first place. But there's a right way and a wrong way to go about it. You would teach us? The ex-Orogle's interest was palpable, a tendril of thought reaching out to brush against Sarah's consciousness. She shrugged. Why not? That's kind of humanity's whole shtick, you know. We see something new and interesting, and our first thought is usually, can I poke it, or I wonder what would happen if, but we've also learned usually the hard way that not everything wants to be poked. The vast chamber seemed to pulse with contemplation. Your species is young, yet you speak with the wisdom of ages. Sarah couldn't help but laugh. Trust me, we're not that wise. We just have a knack for learning from our mistakes. Eventually. Sometimes. Look, the point is, if you want to understand other species, try asking first. You might be surprised at how many would be willing to share their experiences voluntarily. A novel concept, the ex-Orogle mused. We had not considered. Asking. That's because you're used to sharing everything automatically, Sarah pointed out. But for us individualists, sharing is a choice. And choices, my gelatinous friend, are kind of a big deal. The psychic space around her rippled with what felt like a mixture of understanding and excitement. We have much to learn from you, Sarah Johnson. And perhaps you from us. Sarah grinned. Now you're getting it. So what do you say we turn this invasion into a cultural exchange program? I bet we could set up one heck of an intergalactic study abroad experience. You propose an alliance. The ex-Orogle's surprise was evident. Why not? You get to satisfy your curiosity, we get to expand our horizons, and nobody has to deal with the hassle of interstellar warfare. Seems like a win-win to me. The chamber filled with a warmth that felt suspiciously like approval. Your proposal has merit. We will consider it. Fantastic, Sarah beamed. Now, if you don't mind, I should probably head back and let my crew know that we're not about to be assimilated into the alien equivalent of the Borg. They tend to worry when I'm gone too long. Of course, the ex-Orogle pulsed. We look forward to further discussions, Sarah Johnson of Earth. As Sarah felt herself being gently guided back to her physical form, a thought occurred to her. Oh, and one more thing, she called out. If we're going to be friends, you might want to consider redecorating. The whole cosmic horror vibe isn't great for intergalactic PR. The last thing she heard before snapping back to full consciousness was what could only be described as psychic laughter. Sarah's eyes flew open, her body jerking upright with a gasp. She found herself back in her ship, parked exactly where she'd left it on the spongy purple plain. Well, she muttered, rubbing her temples. That was a trip and a half. She reached for her comm unit, praying that it still worked after whatever psychic rollercoaster she'd just been on. Deathworlder to improbable victory, come in. Over. There was a moment of static, then Captain VRZ's voice crackled through, tinted with what sounded suspiciously like relief. MS Johnson, we've been trying to contact you for hours. What happened? Did you succeed in your mission? Sarah couldn't help but chuckle. Oh, Captain, you have no idea. Get ready for one heck of a debrief. Oh, and you might want to prep the galley for a party. We've got some new friends to celebrate. New friends. The captain's confusion was evident even through the staticky comm channel. Yep, Sarah grinned, firing up her ship's engines. Turns out all the ex-Orogle needed was a good old-fashioned human heart-to-heart, or mind-to-mind, I guess. Whatever. The point is, invasion's off, cultural exchange program's on, and I'm pretty sure I just became an honorary member of a psychic hive mind. There was a long pause before the captain spoke again. MS Johnson, are you quite certain you're yourself? Sarah laughed as she guided her ship up through the planet's atmosphere. Oh, I'm me all right, just with a slightly expanded worldview. And let me tell you, Captain, the view from here, it's pretty damn spectacular. As her ship broke free of the planet's gravity well and set a course back to the improbable victory, Sarah couldn't help but shake her head in amazement. She'd volunteered for a suicide mission and ended up brokering an interstellar peace treaty. Not bad for a day's work, she mused. Wonder what they'll have me do for an encore. The stars streaked by outside her viewport, each one holding the promise of new adventures, new misunderstandings to clear up, and new friends to make. And Sarah Johnson, Deathworlder extraordinaire, couldn't wait to see what the universe had in store for her next. The debriefing aboard the improbable victory was, to put it mildly, a circus. Sarah sat at the head of a long table in the ship's conference room, surrounded by a menagerie of alien life forms, all clamoring for explanations. "Let me get this straight," Captain VRZ tittered, his mandibles clicking rapidly in what Sarah had come to recognize as extreme agitation. "You made first contact with the exorugal hive mind, convinced them to abandon their invasion plans, and set up a cultural exchange program. All in the span of a few hours." Sarah leaned back in her chair, propping her feet up on the table. "More or less. Though to be fair, time gets a bit wonky when you're swimming through a sea of cosmic consciousness." Zex Klorp, who had been uncharacteristically quiet until now, suddenly burbled to life. But how? Our most advanced psychic shielding couldn't even penetrate their outer defenses." "Well, that's your problem right there," Sarah grinned. "You tried to shield yourselves. I just opened up." The room erupted in a cacophony of alien voices, each more incredulous than the last. Sarah caught snippets of conversation ranging from impossible to unprecedented to what she was pretty sure was a marriage proposal from a species that reproduced by budding. All right, settle down," she called out, waving her hands for quiet. "Look, it's simple. The exorugal aren't evil. They're just curious, in a really intense, boundary-crossing sort of way." Curious echoed a multi-eyed alien that Sarah had mentally dubbed Argus. "They've been terrorizing the galaxy for centuries." Sarah shrugged. "Yeah, well, one person's terrorizing is another person's overly enthusiastic meet and greet. They didn't realize they were being invasive. In their culture, sharing thoughts is as natural as breathing. And you explain this to them," Captain VRZT asked, his antennae twitching in disbelief. "More or less. I also may have promised them a cultural exchange program. Hope that's cool with everyone." The room fell silent for a moment, then erupted once again in a mix of protests, questions, and what sounded suspiciously like someone planning a welcome party. Sarah held up her hands again. "Look, I know it's a lot to take in, but think about it this way: we just turned a potential galaxy-wide war into the biggest, weirdest foreign exchange student program in history. That's got to count for something, right?" Slowly, the mood in the room began to shift. Disbelief gave way to cautious optimism, and then to excitement. Even Captain VRZT's mandibles seemed to be clicking in a more upbeat rhythm. "MS. Johnson," he said finally, "while your methods are unorthodox, to say the least, I cannot argue with the results. You have done the Galactic Confederation a great service." Sarah grinned. "Thanks, Cap. So, does this mean I get a raise?" The captain's compound eyes blinked in confusion. "But you're not even on our payroll." Worth a shot, Sarah laughed. "How about a medal then? Something shiny I can hang on my wall back home." Before the captain could respond, the ship's AI chimed in. "Incoming transmission from Galactic Confederation High Command. They're requesting an immediate report on the exorugal situation." Sarah stood up, stretching languidly. "Well, folks, looks like it's time for the grown-ups to talk. Captain, you want to handle this one, or should I regale them with tales of my daring psychic adventures?" Captain VRZT's mandibles clicked rapidly. "I think it would be best if I handled the initial report, MS Johnson. Your unique perspective might be a bit much for High Command to process all at once." "Fair enough," Sarah shrugged. "I'll be in the mess hall if you need me. I've got a sudden craving for some of that weird blue stuff that tastes like a mix between cotton candy and existential dread." As she sauntered out of the conference room, leaving behind a still buzzing crowd of alien diplomats and officers, Sarah couldn't help but smile to herself. She'd come aboard the improbable Victory as a curiosity, the lone human in a sea of alien life. Now, she was the linchpin in a new era of galactic cooperation. Not bad for a Deathworlder, she mused, heading towards the promise of strange food and even stranger company. Not bad at all. The improbable Victory continued its journey through the stars, now bearing not just a mixed crew of alien species, but also the weight of a new future, one where understanding and communication could bridge even the vastest of cosmic divides. And at the heart of it all was Sarah Johnson, diplomat, adventurer, and living proof that sometimes the most improbable victory comes from the most unexpected places. As she settled into a seat in the mess hall, surrounded by a curious crowd of alien crewmates all eager to hear her story firsthand, Sarah couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, this was what she was meant for all along. After all, In a galaxy full of wonders and terrors, sometimes all it took to bridge the gap between civilizations was one human with a knack for sarcasm, a stubborn refusal to die, and an open mind. Who knew? Maybe next time, she'd even remember to pack some decent coffee.